right, let's dive into this explainer. Get ready for a totally thrilling Christmas Eve mystery where brains completely outsmart brawn. We're stepping right into the action-packed adventure. Caught the Robbers Cleverly. It's a story that absolutely proves you don't need to be the biggest or the strongest person in the room to win the day. So, let's set the scene, shall we? We're dropping right into the action on a freezing cold Christmas Eve in the dark, heavy woods of Wessex. Meet our hero, 14-year-old James, and his trusty, super strong horse, Jerry. Now, James is out running an important errand for his dad. He's cheerful and honestly kind of proud of how brave he is. But as he's riding through the lonely, heavily wooded vale of Blackmoor, just singing a Christmas carol, he is completely unaware of the danger lurking in the thick bushes just up ahead. Suddenly, boom, a deep voice echoes out from the thicket. 3 sneaky men with blackened faces dart right out of the shadows. Now, James puts up a really brave fight, striking out with all his might, but he's just overpowered. These highwaymen tie his arms tightly behind his back, bind his legs together, toss him into a ditch, and, worst of all, steal his precious horse, Jerry. Talk about a rough start to Christmas Eve, right? Okay, put yourself in James's shoes for just a second. You're tied up in a freezing ditch on a pitch-black, lonely night. The robbers are long gone with your horse. So what do? Do you just lie there and give up? No way. I mean, it's freezing out there. Staying in those dead leaves all night would be incredibly dangerous. Instead, James chooses to fight back. With a massive amount of effort, he wriggles and kicks and squirms until, snap, his legs break free from the heavy ropes. Now, his hands are still tied super tight behind his back, but he manages to stumble through the dark woods. Soon, his heart leaps. He spots a distant light shining through the trees, makes his way toward it, and discovers this massive, brilliantly lit mansion with huge high gables and towers. The front door is actually wide open, so James just wanders right in. He finds himself in this vast, totally silent dining hall. It's completely empty, but get this, a giant, untouched Christmas feast is just sitting there, waiting to be eaten. It looks exactly like the meal was interrupted right before it even began. But wait, he hears footsteps, heavy, hasty footsteps, and deep voices coming from the porch. With literally no time to think, James darts under the massive dining table, using the long tablecloth as the perfect hiding spot. Peeking out from under that tablecloth, James gets the absolute shock of his life. It's the robbers. The exact same men who stole his horse have snuck right into the mansion. Listening really closely, he hears them whispering about stealing jewels and precious plates. And here is their sneaky little plan. They decide to hide themselves inside a large closet right there in the dining hall. They're going to wait for 2 or 3 hours until the family goes to bed so they can just rob the mansion in total peace. Suddenly, the mansion's owner, a guy named Sir Simon, and a whole crowd of fancy guests burst into the room. Turns out they'd been outside investigating a false alarm cry that the robbers set up as a distraction. Now, since James's hands are still tied, he actually has to kick the door just to get their attention. A footman pulls him into the dining hall, and James immediately tries to warn them about the thieves hiding nearby. He explains he was waylaid and robbed, but these snooty guests, they don't believe a word he says. One lady even thinks he's the thief. Well, instead of panicking, James puts on a brave face, stands up tall, and tells a brilliantly clever fib. He announces, "I am a traveling magician." He figures, hey, if they won't believe the truth, he's just gonna have to make them discover the danger for themselves through a little theatrical performance. When Sir Simon jokingly asks if this young wizard can call up spirits, James delivers this absolutely epic line in his most dramatic, booming voice. "I can conjure up a tempest in a cupboard." He tells the doubtful and honestly pretty amused guests that he is going to cast a spell and summon a violent storm inside that very closet where he knows the robbers are hiding. He just has one strange request for his audience to make the magic actually happen. To pull off this trick, James asks for snuff. Now, back in the day, this was a powdery stuff that gentlemen carried around in little boxes, but the most important thing you need to know about it, if you breathe it in, it acts like super-powered sneezing powder, like unstoppable achoo's. James knows exactly what he's doing here. Okay, let's break down this genius, sneaky trick. First, he gets the powder from the young men. Second, shh, he asks for absolute silence so he doesn't break the spell. He takes off his shoes, tiptoes over to the closet door, stands on a stool, and carefully lines that powder all along the top crack of the door. And third, puff. He blows it right inside, raining it down onto the hiding robbers. Suddenly, a tiny, squeaky little sneeze echoes from inside the closet. Sir Simon is totally amazed. He thinks James is just doing an incredible ventriloquism trick, throwing his voice like a puppet master. Sir Simon actually whispers, "Excellent, excellent for one so young." He has literally no idea that real, actual robbers are trapped inside, desperately holding their noses. But James, he just keeps the trick going. He quietly sneaks the lock shut and asks for more snuff. The gentlemen gladly pass up their boxes, and James keeps blowing it into the top of the closet. Those tiny sneezes, they turn into loud sneezes, and then into a giant roaring hurricane of achoo's. It literally sounds like a thunderstorm inside a cupboard. Finally, Sir Simon realizes it is definitely no magic trick. He shouts, "I believe there are men inside and that it is no trick at all." The terrified thieves cry out, "Mercy, mercy, let us out or we shall die of suffocation." The guests grab their walking sticks, James unlocks the door, and the mighty, scary robbers tumble out, just coughing and gasping for breath, completely defeated by some sneezing powder and one very clever kid. The thieves put up zero resistance and are tied up in the outhouse until morning. James's honesty is completely proven to all those fancy guests, and Sir Simon thanks him profusely for his incredible service. But honestly, James only cares about one thing. He is joyfully reunited with his uninjured horse Jerry, who the thieves had hidden nearby. He mounts his strong horse and happily canters off, making it safely back home. And that brings us to the amazing lesson of our explainer today. True cleverness doesn't come from how big your muscles are. It comes from how sharp your mind is. Think about it. James was totally overpowered physically by 3 grown men, but by keeping calm, observing his surroundings, using the tools he had at hand, and applying his wits, he captured the villains without throwing a single punch. We all face challenges in life that seem way bigger or scarier than we are. But I'll leave you with this. The next time you face a giant problem, how will you use your brain to outsmart it? Remember, your mind is always your absolute greatest superpower. Thanks for hanging out with me, and stay clever out there.